Welcome back, everyone, for another inspiring, exciting episode. Today, I'm joined by Jessica Cuevas, founder of Viva La Mami, a podcast and community dedicated to empowering modern Latina mothers to reclaim their culture and redefine what motherhood looks like through storytelling and culturally rooted education. She's a mom of two, a podcaster, a coach, a speaker, an advocate for Latina moms, and her work has been featured in the New York Times, the PBS NewsHour, Canvas Rebel, Straight Arrow News, Bold Journey, and ABC7. And after spending her entire life in the U.S., Jessica made, this courageous decision to move her family to Mexico to reconnect with her roots and her culture, and while creating a life aligned with her values. So through her platform, she helps Latina moms navigate motherhood while celebrating her heritage and building community. And today, we're diving into her journey of leaving that behind in the U.S. and everything that kind of felt familiar, right? What called her to Mexico, the emotional, mental, and spiritual changes, shifts, transformation, healing she's experienced along the way. So we're going to get into all of that because we know that is not an easy thing to do. That is tremendously huge and major. So we're going to get into that, what's helping her, and then what she's learning in the thick of it, of course, building a new life, motherhood. This conversation is really about, courage, it's healing, motherhood identity, and the possibility that open up when we can really choose to listen to what our soul is calling us towards. So welcome, Jessica, to the podcast. I'm so happy you're here. Is there anything that you want to share that I left out or that you'd like to share with the community?
Yes.
Welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Marissa, for having me. It's so exciting that you've joined the fellow podcasting world. I think it's so important for us to just share our voices because I feel like we are super, underrepresented among different spaces, including the podcasting space. And so I feel like literally we get to voice out who we are, what we do, and how we can kind of help each other, in community. So no, I think you basically said everything that we're basically going to talk about. So I'm excited to be
cool.
here.
I know, I was just saying earlier, it's been a while, 3 years that we had a conversation. You invited me to be on your podcast. I was pregnant with my girls. I remember.
Think we were both pregnant.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. And, you invited me on to talk about my own healing journey with body image and disordered eating and, holistic nutrition and all of that. And that was a really healing episode for me too, to come on. And that was kind of one of my first times of speaking out, loud about it. So I was really thankful for that opportunity. But anyway, there's so much has happened, obviously, since then. 3 years later, and that's what we're going to get into today. Definitely what's new and going on with you today as well. And lots of growth and lots of learning lessons for sure along the way. So
yes, a lot has happened, which is wild.
Right?
But, I think that's just part of us being human beings. I think that we shouldn't feel stagnant. We shouldn't feel stuck if we feel like something isn't working out. Kind of like what you mentioned, it could be just the, I don't know, the spirit's just kind of guiding you into something different. And I think sometimes we have to listen to that rather than just trying to find ways, to do better, but you're still kind of going back into that cycle of feeling stuck. And so, yeah.
I could totally relate to that, right? And I'm sure a lot of others out there, their moms listening too, it's tough to break through those cycles, and then especially when you're aware of them and you're like, oh, I just feel stuck in the mud and you think you're doing everything that you can, but it's how do I get past it? It's so hard. But what can you tell us about, for those who don't know you, can you tell us a little bit about what the work that you're doing through Viva La Mami?
Yes. So Viva La Mami was honestly inspired and created once I became a mom. I felt that there was a lack of representation among the Latina motherhood space. I remember I was pregnant. It was the middle of the pandemic with my first child. So it was back in 2020. And I did a quick Google search or a YouTube search. I don't know what it was, but basically I remember seeing images of just la mamá con la chancla, just the stereotypical images that are often comedic and stereotypical and generalizing who a Latina mom is. And I felt that first of all, wasn't the image that my mom and my grandma, mi abuelita, had
Yeah.
on me. And that wasn't the image that I wanted to be as a mom. And so I was like, I need to do something different. And so through that, I was very inspired to first create a blog, but within that blog then came the podcast. And through that podcast
Oh,
came an in-person community back home in Chicago. That's where I'm originally from. And, through that, I created a coaching program for new Latina moms who want to create this balance between their identity as like a mama, but also kind of like getting close to their Latinidad, but
uh-huh.
also giving them permission in breaking away from like those generational curses that we were often brought up and kind of like molded into a more different, approach that better fits her and her needs. Because oftentimes with us
Yeah.
Latina moms, we are highly inspired, but also just, I don't know, we kind of create motherhood into the way that we were raised, that we were brought up, that
Yeah.
we don't give ourselves permission into creating our own version of Latina motherhood. And I think sometimes it's out of fear, whether if we're going to be judged, que dirá la gente sort of thing,
Uh-huh.
that we were all ingrained in those kinds of messaging. But I
Uh-huh.
think that for us,
Yeah.
especially in this generation, we're trying to create something different
Uh-huh.
and unique and inspiring based upon what are the needs of our family.
Yeah.
Because the needs of our family now isn't the same even
Oh
a
my God.
generation ago, you
For
know?
sure.
For
Yeah.
example, and I think that's what really inspired me to, and my husband, to essentially make the move to Mexico. I think that our parents did what they had to do to flee Mexico because our parents are immigrants, and they had no other choice but to just go to a different country to prosper. And I
Right.
appreciate that. But now with us and our generation, we try to check every box. We try to fit in every category. We try
Right. We
to
put
move
ourselves in a
forward.
box,
Yes.
basically. That's what
Yes.
happens is we place ourselves in this box
We
and it's
place
on
ourselves.
purpose. Like they create this. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah. And even though that could be a good thing, that could be a very bad thing, like we
Right.
we
Can't think
felt
for
that we
yourself.
didn't belong or fit in, right? And
Uh-huh.
especially with this, you know, current times in the economy and society and just like the political world that we're living in, we're like, you know what? I feel like
Yeah.
this isn't for us. And so we decided to move back to Mexico to to try something different to see
Yeah.
if it better fits our family. And we're 10 months in, which is wild, and
Exciting. I know.
we're
10
loving it.
months. Damn. That went by quick.
Yeah, yeah.
It's crazy. That's amazing. So kind of like before we get into like the present of what's happening right now, take us back a little bit before what things were like for you, like what family was like or how you were feeling, kind of like before you guys made the decision, maybe like recall back how you were starting to feel mentally, emotionally, physically, even spiritually, all of it as, when you guys started to make that decision and think about like something needed to change. So kind of paint us a picture of like what life looked back then and how you felt if you can.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. So when you and I last spoke, I was working full time, right? And I decided to do a break, right? People call it a motherhood pause, a power pause, whatever it is. But I decided to stay home with my kids full time, while my husband worked full time, right? So I was like, I'm going to be intentional in making this career pause for up until like my youngest Mateo. Now he's just turned 3, until he's like 2 years old. I'm
Mm.
like, I'll just take a year and a half off of um from maternity leave and then go from there. I honestly thought that I would go back to the workforce because I had dedicated 12 plus years in my
Wow.
career, especially coming from higher education, college
Mm.
counseling, college access work, like that has been the profession that I honestly love. And yeah, went back to the job search process. Well, what ended up being something that I thought that it would take months, it took almost 2 years to look for a job
Uh-huh.
that not only, was something that I was selective for because I knew that I was in my career where I needed to A, get paid more,
Uh-huh.
B, hold
Uh,
a better position than previous ones, and C, to, help sustain our family.
of course.
Because yeah, now we were a family of four. And so
Right.
that job search process, it just wasn't successful. And I know that right now all of us are struggling right now with, again, with the economy, with, trying to make ends meet, and all of that. And we were very fortunate enough that um when I was pregnant, we had bought a building back in the city of Chicago. So we lived in the suburbs, but then we
Uh-huh.
decided to move and sell that house and then
Uh-huh.
go to the building that we bought, and that was a
Uh-huh.
3-unit building. So at least, we were able to house hack, and house hacking is essentially when you live in one of the units and then you rent out the rest, and basically those tenants pay the mortgage. So technically we were
Okay.
living rent free. And at
Okay.
least that helped us to
Wow.
some extent. But
Uh-huh.
we lived in the smallest unit, which was a 1-bedroom apartment for a
Wow.
family of four.
Yeah.
And we thought that that was the temporary solution until I find a job. But
Uh-huh.
I just didn't, and I couldn't. I tried to scale my business. Unfortunately, it hasn't been as successful as I thought it would be. And
Uh-huh.
so we were like, what should we do? So we
Uh-huh.
had plan A, which was me looking for a job. Plan B was my husband trying to look for a better job or a promotion. Plan C was to sell the house
Yeah.
and then perhaps rent somewhere. Or plan D was to move to Mexico.
Mm,
Um, we tried to go with plan A, plan B, plan C. We were like, no, we need to have something under our name. We have to keep
yeah.
this building. And
Yeah.
so we were like, let's go to Mexico. And I think just kind of going back to what we initially talked about, it's like if we are feeling stuck, if we feel like there's no solution, if we feel that nothing is coming towards us and basically working against us, we just need to pivot and look
Uh-huh.
into what are other options.
Uh-huh.
And we're very fortunate because, what we get from the rent out of the building, we are paying for housing here in Mexico.
Oh,
My
great.
husband is able to have a fully remote job. I am now in the process of getting a new remote job that is super part-time where it's still flexible enough for me to be with my kids, and
Yeah,
to pick them up, drop them off, from
exactly.
school. And so, um, right now we are in kind of like that, end of that tunnel, right? But I feel like it has taken us 10 months to kind of like
Yeah.
heal from that, right? And really appreciate where we're at right now, and especially in the motherland where
Uh-huh.
our parents came from, right? Where they were born.
Right.
Um and so yeah, so it has been, I would say now reflecting on that, it was a struggle. There were
Yeah.
moments where like I try to do everything correct. I tried to check off every box. And just because I took a 2 year career break, I'm suffering those types of consequences.
Uh-huh.
But there were moments when I blamed myself for making those decisions. And even
Mm.
now,
We had
that,
some blame. Yeah.
yes,
Mm.
that imposter syndrome gets to
Uh-huh.
me and that negative voice gets to me.
Yeah.
But I would say that, I think there are systems that are in place that unfortunately, go against women, mothers,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and,
Yeah. Depression. Yeah.
and yeah, and just like how everything is going on right now with the economy, with our current world. I think that is to blame instead of like me personally.
Mm,
So,
yeah, right. And that opens up your eyes a lot when we can take that view and that image of when we start to do a lot of decolonial, work and
mhm.
decolonizing a lot of different areas of our life when we really start to see it and the oppression, that's everywhere and that affects how that affects us too. And that kind of in a way, I feel like for me personally, it's not like a sigh of relief, but it's like kind of in a sense like, oh, okay, I can stop putting this blame on myself. Like, it's not
Mhm.
my fault. Like, this is what's going on. It's a collective thing, right? It's not just me. And then other emotions come from that. Be anger, frustration, like grief, whatever it is, right? Can come from that. But like in your sense, when you mentioned you noticing the inner critic or imposter syndrome, things like that, like what helped you work through some of those things? What else helped you?
Yeah, I think just trying to figure out, a solution, and I think not being in that scarcity mindset. I think for
Mm,
us, it's very easy, especially as children of immigrants. I would say first or second generation in the US, right? We often are being told, well, you got to work hard to get to a certain point. And when that doesn't come to fruition, you often feel like stuck. You often feel like, oh my gosh, there is no other way. But in fact, there can be different ways to go around it. And I think that is a privilege in itself, especially for us as homeowners, right? Where my husband has a fully remote job. We were able to figure out other ways. But I think all of that is come down to mindset work and
yes.
not trying to limit yourself. And I think that that is
Mm,
that is something that we really need to, pay attention to,
uh-huh.
especially as children of immigrants, that if our parents went to a different country without any resources,
Right.
without any money, without understanding the language or the culture, why can't we and inspire that? Why can't we feel
Uh-huh.
inspired from that?
Right.
Um,
That's such
and
a good
and
point.
oftentimes, yeah, it is that mindset work that we need to do. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of mindset work and belief work, right? It kind of going through some of those self-limiting beliefs, like you mentioned, scarcity being one of them.
Yeah.
That's something that I struggle with a lot too. And again, it's those oppressive systems, like everything that we were, the way our parents were brought up or their parents, like our ancestors, right? And everything, all the experiences that they went through molded, their experience with money and how they were treated. And like, it's just a generational wound, right? That
Mhm.
somehow affects us as well until we start to be more aware of how it started, where it started, and then how we can try to change our mindset and belief around it. It's like it's happening the same in a way, but like differently in this current, like new age, like modern
Mm.
times. I feel like it's like,
Yeah.
just, does that make sense? I don't know if it makes sense.
Yeah. No, yeah. Yeah. I think in a way where our parents kind of paved the way for us, and whether if you want to imitate that, but in a better way, like,
Hmm.
yeah, just,
Hmm.
just like how you mentioned,
Yeah, yeah.
you
Because
know.
there's a lot of healing around that, like you said, with
Mhm.
even just money. I
Mhm.
had a guest on. We talked a lot about how she started healing her relationship with money. And how that scarcity mindset. But scarcity can show up through so many areas of our
Yes.
life, not just money.
Yes.
And that is a really difficult one to definitely heal from too. So
Right.
thank you for bringing that up because mindset is huge. Belief work is huge when it comes to doing this work, healing, and having new perspectives and seeing what's possible, really,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
So now that you're in Mexico, and you spent most of like your life growing up in the US, what do you think, what can you recall like your relationship was like with your Mexican culture and your roots? And did you ever think you were going to move to Mexico?
That's a great question. Yeah, I would say to a certain extent, ¿verdad? Because I wouldn't say that I'm 100% Mexicana, but I would say that my parents did a very great job in inculcating, like the culture, the language. Spanish was my first language at home.
That's great.
My grandma, mi abuelita, babysat us. My mom was a working mom, and so with that, I grew up in a multi-generational household. I remember mis bisabuelos visiting.
Oh,
At that time, it was from Mexico, but then they decided to settle in Wisconsin. And so I remember my bisabuelos visiting, my other bisabuela from my grandpa's side, the great tia, who never got
Family
married,
coming in
never
and
had
out.
children. Yes. So like I remember seeing all of these faces at my grandparents' house, and then mis
Mm,
tias, my mom's sisters and my cousins,
nice.
because my grandma also took care of it. So like it was a lot of people for sure.
Yeah.
But within that multi-generational kind of experience, I got to experience like little snippets of like como es Mexico, right?
Mm,
Um, and so that's something that I'm really
family.
thankful for, porque I felt like the transition to Mexico wasn't as difficult, because I can interact with people, there are
Yeah.
certain, dichos and like
Uh-huh.
even like gestures, ¿verdad? Que
Uh,
I still carried on with
uh,
from seeing my family.
uh-huh.
Um, I would say, though, that moving into a different city, aquí en León, Guanajuato, even though I do have some primas that live here y toda la cosa, my family's technically not from a city of Mexico. They came from a pueblito, un ranchito,
Oh,
so that's all what I knew whenever we would visit Mexico. I remember visiting a couple times when I was like little, like 4 or 5 years old. And then it wasn't until I became a teenager that I started to kind of start visiting.
uh-huh.
And it would just be straight to El Rancho. We would go to the airport aquí in León, but I never really knew of León until just the airport and like a water park, and that was it.
Yeah.
And then we would go straight to El Rancho, right? So like I've always had that image of Mexico.
Mm,
Um, and I think that is the image that many of us back in the US know of, because that's the places where our parents left, right?
uh-huh.
And now that we're in a larger city, León is like the sixth largest city of Mexico. I'm
Oh,
just
wow.
like blown away every day. I'm just
Wow.
like, dang, these people dress up so much better than I do. Aquí estoy yo en el pueblito, trying to be all like cute and everything. And then when I go to a León, I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like this low. And these people are
Oh,
like by far very, but
mm,
you can tell the economic differences, right? Like
mm,
classism, like it's
uh-huh.
so prevalent
Oh,
still
interesting.
to this day here in Mexico.
Mm,
Just like the level of resources and accessibility it is to live in a city versus like in a ranchito. And that is why my
uh,
parents had to leave, right? They had
uh-huh.
no other choice. My
Uh-huh.
parents could have decided to come to León, but I think because of the propaganda that people were brought up
Yeah, for
about
sure.
the US, they were like, no, we'll just go to El Norte and,
Yeah.
just make our lives there. And so, yeah, so I think that was a surprising part of like us moving to una ciudad that is so close to my family, but they never had that
Mm,
opportunity to move here. And
yeah.
so that in itself, I would say, is somewhat healing for my family to see it from this end, and interesting enough, my parents also returned back to Mexico. They
I was going to ask you
repatriated.
about that because I saw one of your posts about them building. Yeah, I was going to ask
Yes.
you about that. That's exciting.
Yes. Yes. So
How,
now, they're living the empty nester retired life, ¿verdad?
oh,
And I think for the sole purpose of, they worked so hard, right? For the sole purpose of building their home in in the place where they were born, right? In su
mhm.
ranchito. And so,
Wow.
and that is beautiful, right? That is so beautiful
Mhm,
that even my kids are now seeing that they
mhm.
have the best of both worlds, with, being a part of the US. Yes, we have roots in Chicago, but we also have roots here.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
now that
that's beautiful.
they're
Yeah.
experiencing a whole different childhood, and kind of going back to part of your question, I never imagined myself coming to Mexico. And I think, again, I always thought of that image of like the poor side of Mexico.
Mm,
And I think that
I think a
even
lot
for
of us
me,
have. Hmm.
yes, I think that in itself has to be a healing process, right?
Yeah.
Where
Oh, yeah.
we've heard from our abuelitos, tíos, tías, parents, oh, México está muy pobre, ¿para qué
Uh-huh.
ir? ¿Para qué
Uh-huh.
visitar? And
Uh-huh.
it's like, no, if we give it a
Yes.
chance, even in the ranchitos, like they have done so much better than how it used
Yeah.
to be. Like I remember
Yeah.
visiting Mexico when I was like 4, and there was no pavement,
Mhm.
no había cemento. It was all
Right.
rocky and mud and everything. But now
Yeah.
it's like las carreteras are actually pretty safe and good. But
Yeah.
sometimes you just have to give it a try and have that
Mhm.
open-mindedness
Mhm.
about, just
Yes.
what Mexico has to offer. Because I think
Yeah.
it can offer you a lot, I would
Mm-hmm.
say.
No, I'm so glad you brought that up because, like with any new thing that we are learning or healing, any kind of work that we're doing, or changing our perspective on something, there, it's like we're blinded, looking at things a certain way or believing
Mhm.
it a certain way. And when we take off those glasses or put the blinders down and do some education or deepen your knowledge or get in touch with, I don't know, people in that area, or just there's so many resources we have nowadays. Look up videos, like hear a podcast, like read,
Mhm.
like do something to educate yourself on that certain topic, right? And here being saying moving to a certain location, a different location, and kind of breaking those myths or stigmas or anything like that that you have fears about, right? Because those fears come from who knows where they come from, but they're there like to create for that exact result, to be fearful of going out there and trying something new and different and in alignment with your soul or whatever, you like your well-being, your family, your growth, right? That fear instilled in us
Yeah.
is meant to be there for a reason, because that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to promote fear any way that they can, which is crazy. So I think when we also acknowledge that, and like that's also a part of that healing work, is like, okay, I recognize that fear, it's there in me, but at the same time, I can learn about it. Like, how can I work through that fear, basically, right? Learn more about it, get more educated, like to slowly say, like, okay, this, so to know, realize like what's true and what's not true, basically.
Yeah. Yes, I love it. I love it.
That is so amazing. I'm so happy for your parents, though. That is awesome.
Yeah.
And for you guys, that's a beautiful thing to see. And like you said, that kind of touches base on a question that I wanted to ask. Like your children are now, being raised in their childhood here in Mexico right now. So what do you think are some values like you're hoping to create more of, like not just for yourself, but for your children, your family?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. I think for my kids specifically is to not be tied in with that scarcity mindset, right? That there are possibilities, that we need to be open, and
Mhm.
willing to try new things. And I think um one main concern that a lot of parents have as far as with moving abroad is that how will it impact my child? I don't want my child to like have this super big trauma or to
Yeah.
move them out of this like comfort zone that they're in. But in reality, they're so resilient.
They
They're
are
hella resilient.
resilient, like
Oh,
crazy. Oh my God. So much more than
honestly,
we are.
like, yes, we had trouble.
We make
We
the worst of
had
it.
yeah, like we had somewhat of like a hard time, especially reestablishing like a new village, a group of friends, But now I would say that we do now. But our kids, like they made friends, hasta los vecinos, whenever we go to this like panaderia that they're like obsessed with, they make friends. Like they make friends with anyone,
Uh,
and so I think that that is something that we need to learn a lot from, especially from
yeah,
the young kids. I
the
can only speak
kids.
with
Absolutely.
like preschoolers because my kids are 5 and 3, but I think that there's a lot that we can learn from them, and
For
kind of
sure.
going back to that, las gafas que we have,
Mhm.
like just take them off, and you'll be surprised like how resilient and open and willing your kids could be, especially if you move abroad. And I think as far as with values, um, I don't know, Mexico is just so family friendly. Even when we go to restaurants, if my husband and I actually want to have a date, there are restaurants here in Mexico where they have a daycare little
Oh,
area.
wow.
They have a nanny and they can take
Oh
care
my
of your
gosh.
kids while you
Wow.
can actually have an adult conversation with your partner.
That's
So,
interesting. Wow.
yes, and I think the US is very tied into like liability, safety, like, oh,
Yeah.
creep, like, and aquí in Mexico, it's like, no, like people actually
Mm,
respect children.
mhm,
And so the level of respect that my kids are having here is so different than
mm.
back home in the US, which is kind of ironic, right? When
Yes.
yeah, I don't want to go there. But so yeah, so I think with values it's like I want my kids to feel authentic and genuine to
Mhm.
themselves, not trying to kind of live in a world where you have to conform.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I love that. So, and that's hard, like in today's world, and I guess, yeah, here in the US, right, is like all the pressure, and not only in the schools, but obviously like social media. So everything is just so much different than when we were younger, around, our kids' age, adolescence. It's so much different. I feel like there's a lot more pressure, just because of that. So not creating, but guiding our children to be more authentic in who they are and feeling comfortable in who they
Yeah.
are and free. There's a lot of limitations that, or how could I say, like they want to get molded and pulled into different directions
Mm.
because of, what is it, self-esteem and the social like expectations and the peer pressure, like all of that, right, is really challenging. And I'm sure we'll both get there with our kids one day. But, I love that you're focused. That's one of your guys' focus while you're there is you feel like they have a different experience where it doesn't seem as heavy in that way as opposed to here
Mhm.
in the US. Is that how you're noticing it?
Yeah. 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 I would say that.
Mm,
And I think just for kids to have this level of freedom, right? And again, it all ties back with, just like letting them be who they are. And I think that freedom here is a little bit different in terms
mm,
of how freedom is in the US, especially like as a child.
yeah,
When I tell parents about like the school shooting drills that my oldest had to do in pre-K 3, because he did get to go to
oh
school
my
in the
God,
US, in Chicago. Like, how do you explain that to a child, first of all? But that
exactly.
doesn't exist here. And so when I tell parents that key, they're like, what? Like, you actually do that? And I'm like, yeah, a lot of schools have to do
Oh
that.
my gosh, I know, right? And that's a
And
terrible thing. It's an traumatic experience for the kids already, right? Because they feel
yes,
anxious when they hear those alarms go off, and
yes.
so many on their nervous system, basically, right? It's like a trigger on their nervous system. And, there are so many reasons why we decided to homeschool our son this year.
Oh,
Um,
good.
and well, one of them, a big one, is the freedom and kind of
Mhm.
just breaking away from the system of them being tied to a rigid curriculum, a rigid time schedule, and restrictive. So that's something we're going to try this year. But anyway,
Okay.
yeah, the freedom is a lot more. That's a big thing. And when we get like in school, and when we were in school, and the kids today, it's just, that's what kind of molds you with some issues as you get older, like, the good girl syndrome, don't speak
Mhm.
too loud and sit still and, stay in your seat and, you can't raise your voice to speak up. Like, you know what I mean? Like just little issues like that in the long run, like have affect us in adulthood, being able to speak out in people or speak, our truth or anything like that. Just so many things
Mhm.
that can prevent us from feeling like our authentic selves and like our true selves and not being able to actually feel fully free, like to just
Yeah,
be who we are. So many
exactly.
issues that contribute to that.
Yes.
Right?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
How do you feel the difference in between like when you were living in the US versus here? Talking about that, like freedom and how, like, what shifts have you noticed or changes have you noticed within yourself throughout
Mm.
these past 10 months?
Yeah, I think physically my body, I don't know, I'm closer to the sun. Probably, I mean, coming from Chicago, right?
Oh,
Where
yeah.
there's sun maybe 5 months out of the year,
Yeah.
where this is my first like cycle, right? Of like
Mm,
having sun close to
that's
me.
so true.
And yeah, because you're from El Paso, right? So like,
Yes.
yeah,
Sun
you're
City, that's what they call I don't call
yeah,
it Sun
yeah.
City
I
for
mean,
nothing.
yeah. So as far as like with nature itself, like I never felt so, I don't know, my body feels so different. I mean,
Mm,
I would say like in November, I was a little bit overwhelmed by the sun. I was like, okay, sun, this is too much. But that is because my body had to like adjust,
adjust. Yes.
to being in this different climate, different,
Right?
environment. But now that I'm closer to this, I'm like, wow, like this feels good. Like my energy levels are different.
Mm,
I don't struggle as much falling. asleep, going to bed or waking up. I'm still not a morning person, but
Mhm.
the sun is basically in front of me. And I'm like, okay, that means it's time to wake up.
Yeah.
um, and it's funny, like even like the time change, we talked about time zones, right?
Yeah.
Like that hasn't really changed as far as with me adapting to these like rules that I don't know who created the time change,
I know,
daylight savings,
right?
back in the US. But yeah, even with that, like it's as little as that,
Mhm.
um, I don't know. So this isn't specifically with us living in León, but visiting El Ranchito, where my family's from. Like for some reason, I feel like the sense of energy. I don't know if it's from my ancestors. And in fact, my bisabuela, um, when she was in her last couple of weeks of like life,
Mm,
I decided to bring my kids with me. It was like July of 2024, and I was like,
mhm,
I'm gonna be here with mi
mm,
bisabuela for like the very last moments. And
mhm,
I'm so thankful that I got to experience that. She passed away at my grandparents' house. That's where we visit, where we stay at
mhm.
right now while my parents are building their home. But that's our home too. Like mis
Yeah.
abuelitos, like, no, this is tu casa. Like whenever you're here, like they gave me the keys. I'm like, okay, great. And so every time when I step foot into that home, it's like just, I don't know. I feel like it's a good sense of overwhelm in a way because I feel this energy.
Mm,
And every time when I get there, for some reason leaving, I get this sense of clarity, whether if it's for my
wow.
business or my to-do list that I
Mhm,
have to do, right, on my personal life. Like for some reason, it's almost like a re-energizing, like
mhm.
recharge
That gives
whenever
me
I go.
goosebumps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's because I'm connected with my people, like my own family that for
Mhm,
so many generations have lived there. And I'm very lucky because my
mm,
parents are both from the same pueblo, right? So it's like twice the amount of
mhm,
energy that I get.
mhm.
But
And you're
yeah,
the
and I
cycle
think,
breaker. You're the cycle
yeah.
breaker in the family. And the ancestors are the ones that speak to the cycle
Mm.
breakers,
Mm.
They reach out, they communicate, and they bring that energy and they want to guide you and support you because you are the chosen cycle breaker, which is amazing. That's beautiful to feel. It
I
gives me
love that.
goosebumps.
Oh, that means a
Mhm.
lot. I had no idea.
You're the cycle breaker
Yeah.
in
Wow.
your family right now
Mm.
and for your boys. You're breaking
Yeah.
some of those wounds and you're doing a lot different.
Mm. Wow.
How does that feel?
Oh my gosh. Feels a little emotional right now. Yeah. Yeah, I never
Just
thought of it
let it
that
feel.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mhm. Let that soak in, girl, because it's very meaningful, and
Mhm.
it is emotional too. And it's hard work. Like you said, you can feel their energy. You can trust that they'll be there supporting you and guiding you. Your bisabuela, like all your other ancestors there, cheering you on because you are doing this work. That's also liberating them too at the same
Mhm.
time.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my
So
gosh.
beautiful work that you're doing over there. So maybe you're also called over there for that reason too.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
Viva
I
La in
mean,
that way.
yeah.
Not just your children's, and their generation, but the past generations as well.
Yeah.
Bring in your family, your parents are over there now,
Yeah.
which maybe they'll receive healing in some ways just being there. It'll open up memories, emotions, that were left behind and pushed aside. And then
Mhm.
sometimes they just come out of nowhere, right? And sometimes they're heavy, but at the same time, they were things that are needed for our attention and our acknowledgement and a memory like,
Mhm.
oh, yeah, I remember that. And it can be heavy and it can be beautiful at the same time,
Yeah.
right? Which is
Absolutely.
something seems like what you guys are experiencing too at the same time. Is that what you've
Yes.
noticed as well?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's because I think, and I think it's the cultural aspect, in in terms of being in a different country, ¿verdad? Aquí you feel a little bit more present,
Mm,
like you're enjoying the moment that you're in. Whereas in the US, it's like you're always rushing, you're always in a constant, you know, go, go, go type feeling. And while, yes, here we still are hustling the same way, right? My
mhm,
husband still has a job. Like
mhm.
I take and pick up the kids from school. I do all of these side projects. I freelance and all that. Like we're still doing things, right?
Right.
Pero I don't know. It's something about being here that
Mhm.
you're in the moment and then you go on to the next
The
thing and
next
then the
thing,
next
you're
thing.
just
And
present with
it's
what you're doing. Yeah.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's hard for us to do that here in motherhood. I feel like we were talking about earlier, there's so much going on, the economic hardship, the political, really also it's like a spiritual war too, I feel like as well. Um, there's just a lot going on, a lot of heavy things going on, people working long hours, the gas prices, the food, like you said, trying to make ends meet, that mothers not getting support, right?
Mhm,
With
mhm.
everything that they have going on, maybe their partner is in this armed services, a service member, or drafted, or they're alone, right? And they're not might be getting the support that maybe some people might have in other countries, their village, their own, which also is really heavy, like makes a massive difference on their well-being, and our
Absolutely.
mental space, our capacity to be present,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, that's a lot. So I'm so glad that you're noticing you're having a little bit more, that you're noticing more presence and you have more
Mhm,
energy and
mhm.
you can connect with, your culture more and your ancestors and your, like everybody. Sounds like it's been really filling for your spirit and your heart too at the same
Yes.
time.
Yes. Yes. It has honestly, like I don't regret making this decision. And there are moments though when I'm not going to lie,
Mm-hmm.
it's that negative talk, right? That negative talk
Right.
that just makes you want to follow it for some reason and
Right.
and it's still with you.
Mm-hmm.
Pero it makes it much easier for me to just like let it go.
Mm.
And just like I know
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna return, right? Voice,
Right.
pero
See?
at this moment, I know that there was a reason why we came here. It's for some people, it's a radical thing, it's a crazy thing, but I'm like, no, for some reason, whether if it's our ancestors' energy, whatever is above
Mm-hmm.
us that is out of
Mm-hmm.
our control, we are
Mm-hmm.
here for a
Mm-hmm.
purpose and a
Mm-hmm.
reason, and
Mm-hmm.
we followed it, and we're indulging it. And
Yeah.
and and a lot of people are like, because again, it's very US centric, right? Pues
Mm-hmm.
you have to have like a 10-year plan,
Yeah. Or like
what
define what quote unquote success looks like and be.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. But in my defense, it's like, well, my kids are having a different experience. We're having a different experience. We
Yeah.
have been received very well by people, hasta the friends, our friends that we made que son de aquí, we asked them, well, who are we? Like, in your opinion, like, are
Mm-hmm.
we pochos? Are we gringos? Are we, you know? And they're like, no, tú eres mexicana. Like, just you and I, you just happen to be born in the US. And I was like, okay, then I'll accept that.
I'll take it.
I'll take it.
Yeah. Wow.
And yeah, so we feel like right now we are just embracing it, and we'll just follow whatever it is, the spirits, fate. I don't know. I mean, honestly, I'm not a super religious person, but at least for me, I can accept whatever is out there, like energy, and
Mm-hmm.
and that's what can essentially influence us to make the next decision.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm okay with that. I don't need to have this 5-10 year plan in
Mm-hmm.
mind,
Mm-hmm.
because from what I know is that whatever goals we have, I mean, no pueden cumplir. And then that's when we fall back into that
Things
cycle of
change all the
like,
time. Yeah.
mhm,
That's such a
mhm,
great point that you just brought out. For the people who are more like regimented about, perfectionism and like, oh, it's got to go this way. That's what keeps us stuck. And
mhm,
then we know this, like that's what keeps us stuck. But letting go and trying to just trust in whoever you believe in, your higher power, God, creator, whatever, spirit, universe, And trusting that is like easier said than done. It's so hard, but it is that easy, you know? Like,
Yeah.
and to let go of, I guess that's like, again, that fear, going back to that, to let go of it is just like, it's freeing, but it's also scary. Like, what
Yeah.
other fears did you have about making this major life change when you moved?
Yeah, yeah, there are fears about, tenants leaving, right? And we're like,
Mm,
so that's kind of like on that real estate side. And I think that
mm,
is always in the back of your mind. But then
mhm.
again, we've been very fortunate and lucky to have really good tenants, not having
Oh, good.
enough money. But to be honest, like aquí, you could sell candy in front of your kid's school and you can make money, like,
Mhm.
so
It's not like you have to
it's
do it a certain way or it has to look a certain way, like here,
right,
where you get
exactly.
trapped up in that mindset.
Right,
Yes.
right. And I think
So
that
limiting.
aquí in Mexico, like, that's something that we also have to acknowledge, it's not
Mm,
just like, yes, it's okay to have fears. It's okay. Maybe you can listen to them because sometimes you can't just be impulsive and make random decisions, right? But I think that, como dice el saying, like, when there's a will, there's a way, right? Like,
mhm,
yes, yes, in Mexico, people
mm,
find ways to sustain themselves.
mhm,
And if anything, that has been a big lesson for me, a big learning
mm.
opportunity.
I like that.
During the holidays, I was making coquito and I was selling some coquito because, like, I grew up in
Nice.
Chicago. I grew up like close to
Yeah.
like Puerto Ricans. And so aquí in Mexico, they never heard of this like
Oh,
Puerto
wow.
Rican drink. And so it's like, okay, well, how can I bring my skills into making something?
That's
And
awesome.
I'm in the middle of creating my own college consulting business as well because I have years
Amazing.
of higher ed experience. And I'm like, and again, I think it's just,
Mm,
if you're just concentrated in that fear of like, oh my gosh, well, ¿qué va a decir la gente? Or there's not going to be any other
mhm,
ways to find a job or
mhm,
income or whatever.
mhm.
If we're so infiltrated in those types of like negative thoughts
Thoughts?
and feelings, we're not going to get out of our fear.
Yeah.
We, if anything, fear is a challenger to
To
allow
drive
us
that. Mhm.
to move forward. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Right? It's like, chasing your fear is like gonna lead you to like maybe where you're supposed to go, where it's calling
Exactly.
you, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
God, it's so hard to
And it is hard,
do.
but
Right? Yeah.
just like with anything that makes us feel uncomfortable
Yes.
or
Maybe get used to
scared,
it little by little.
we,
I'm more
yeah.
like, I have to be gentle with it. Like I take baby steps. I'm like, can't do
Hey,
massive things, but I have to, you know, get out there. And I think I am little by little. I'm like taking bigger steps little by little that feel safe
yeah.
at the same
Yes.
time. So kind of on that note of logistics, how can you tell us briefly, like, how did you guys actually make that move? Like the practical
Mhm.
steps to help you get from Chicago to Leon?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so it was February of 2025 when we were like, because I
Mm,
was waiting for this one position that I really wanted, this job, right? And again, the universe was like, nope, you're not going to have a traditional job. I wasn't
mm,
offered the position. And we had already talked about this between my husband and I. Were like, if I don't get this job, we're moving to Mexico. And I'm dead serious. And he was like, okay, sure, whatever.
yeah.
So I wasn't offered that position. And we're like, okay, well,
Mm,
let's see what's up because,
see follow through. Uh-huh.
there's a difference between just like pillow talking and just like having these random plans, ¿verdad?
Right.
Pero not actually executing them. So
Uh-huh.
we decided to, over spring break, March, of my son's like spring break, like we decided to go and visit family in Mexico. We knew that Leon always, was a city that was pretty comparable to Chicago.
Uh-huh.
Like we're both city kids. We
Mm,
we knew for sure we wanted to move to a city just for accessibility and resources and all of that. And 2 years back, we had a 4-week like vacation because my husband was able to take like half of his parental leave like for whatever. So we're like,
uh-huh.
okay, let's go to Mexico for 4 weeks. So that really allowed us to have a glimpse of like what it's like
Wow.
to be in Oaxaca, what it's like to be in Mexico City and Leon.
Nice.
And out of all those three cities, we decided on Leon.
Oh, how cool.
So then during our spring break, we decided to stay here for a week and kind of explore. We're kind of scouting,
Mm-hmm.
looking around, okay, we have a feel of like what's el norte versus the south.
Mm-hmm. The
And
different sides of the town. Mm-hmm.
exactly. And we visited schools. So that
Mm-hmm.
was a big thing. We knew that we wanted to put our kids into a school
Mm-hmm.
for them to be fully immersed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in
Yeah.
Leon, there's a lot of options. There's bilingual schools, there's
Nice.
religious schools, there's private, public, small, big. And we finally picked one that was fitting for our kids. So it's preescolar, and they would be in the same building together. And it's a really great school. It's so cute.
Good.
And yeah, so we were like, okay, we chose a school. And then when mi bisabuela was, no, that was actually, no, I lied. Then in May, I decided to come back to enroll them.
Mm-hmm.
And during that time,
Oh,
when I
okay.
was enrolling the kids at that school, I was like scouting again, more different towns because Leon is massive. I
Mm-hmm.
still don't know parts of it, yeah, it's not just the airport again, what I used to think of back then when I was little.
Right.
So yeah, so that really gave me an idea of like what are the possible, you know, places to live, like colonias and all of
Mm-hmm.
that. Um, and I'm very lucky. We're very lucky. I have a prima here. She literally helped us to
Nice.
check out the different schools. I
Oh, great.
had a long distance friend. No sé, hicimos amigas like I said, like maybe 12 years ago. We were both
Oh.
single and now we're moms, and so she was very helpful in the transition. And then because of social media, this mujer who is also from the US had recently moved to Leon, where her husband is from,
Mm-hmm.
and she has been super helpful. So I think with
Nice.
the logistics,
Support.
it's
Mm-hmm.
yes, it's with
Support.
the logistics, it's also important for you to do it on your own,
Mm-hmm.
but it's super important and helpful to look for support.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, if you don't know people who are from here, like join those Facebook groups, right? Join
Right.
those communities because there are genuinely nice people that can, show you the ropes and kind of guide you
Mm-hmm.
along the way. And through that, you can build your own village. And I think that that is an important part, especially if you're thinking about moving abroad.
Yeah.
It's not about like finding the house or the apartment that you want to live
Mm-hmm.
in. It's finding the
The
people that would
people.
help you and be there for you while you're in a different country. And
That's
that
such a
has been
good
very
point.
helpful. Hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember you posted about your husband, or he had an issue, like a health issue, and then you were
Yes.
like, you had, just turned to some of your support system, and then that kind of brought up that conversation, right, with that. And
Hmm.
that is very true because that's kind of, well, number one, we're not used to that. So
Hmm.
it's not going to be naturally in our mind, like, oh, who am I going to get support from, right? Because we don't already receive support that much. Maybe
Yeah.
some do, but, the majority don't. So that
Yeah.
makes sense that, it's like one of those last things on the list that we might think about or think about at all. So thank you for bringing that up because that's a very crucial piece, I think, to it as well. Moving to a new place and abroad, another country, whatever, um,
Yeah.
making contacts, building relationships to help with your support throughout that transition for sure. I can
Yes.
imagine that can be extremely helpful and
Yeah.
valuable.
It is. It is.
A little bit
Definitely.
less daunting when you have some help, less like a coach or just like anybody to help guide you with anything.
Right. Right.
What advice would you give to another family considering a similar move? Anything else that you would add to that?
No, I think definitely, letting go past the fear. And especially if you are first, second gen in the US, know that your parents or grandparents did this. And again, without
Mm.
TikTok, without resources, without money. And I know that for them, they made a move to a different country for different, very different reasons than what you and I would do, right?
Mm.
But I think that that is part of living that dream that our ancestors always wanted us
Mhm.
to do. It's not about settling in and, just like staying where you're at and feeling stuck. It's about what
Mm,
is next for you and listening to that, right?
for sure.
Listening to that inner voice or whatever voice there is that's, through spirituality and faith. Like, I
Mhm.
think that that in itself is a sign for you to move forward. And that is okay. I know that there's a community out there. There's people that will literally help you from like what to do back in the US in terms of selling your homes, selling your things, getting rid of a bunch of stuff,
Yeah.
to the transportation, the moving, the
Mhm.
logistical side of things, to like the reestablishment.
Right.
And I'm here as well, like I am offering like consultation calls for that, so
Amazing.
that if in case there are moms, families listening to this episode, like I'm always here as well, because I think that that in itself is different when you are moving to a different country than when our parents did. Like all what
Mhm.
they had was like coyote and that was it,
Mhm.
right? And unfortunately, coyote had taken advantage of a lot of
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, for sure.
And now there's people like me that are willing to help and not gatekeep,
Genuinely
because
help, exactly.
um yeah, it all takes
The
a community and
experience.
a village. So
Yeah, absolutely. And that, well, the personal experience, that you gain from it
mhm.
as well, and the
Yeah.
lessons that you learn along the way. On that note, what do you think have been like some of the most difficult or like hardest parts of the transition, you think?
Yeah, I think for me, it has been leaving my siblings.
Mm,
My sisters, my two sisters. At first, they didn't believe it, and then it came pretty serious, and they're like, "No, you're not leaving, right?" Like they were in this like,
mm,
um, just like disbelief, right? But they've accepted the fact, we FaceTime each other. That's the good thing about technology, right? That we're still involved. We still
mhm,
keep our kids involved,
mhm.
especially with mis suegros who are back home in Chicago, and my sister-in-law. Like, we still want to keep updated and keep up to
Yeah.
date with our lives and involve the kids with their grandparents back in the US. So I think that has been a difficult
Mm,
part, just like not having that
mhm.
ease and accessibility to like our very close friends and
Your immediate
families back home.
family. Yeah,
Yeah.
that is, I can relate to that. I picture that and I'm like, oh, well, leaving my parents and then leaving, my sister and then leaving everybody, your cousins and all that, like you said, friends. And that is, I feel like a very difficult thing to come to terms with, or to just, you know, temporary goodbyes. And yes, only through technology, or maybe when you can fly down here and there. I'm glad you guys are still staying connected and, as best as you
Yes.
can, because that can be hard. Did you feel homesick at all or overwhelmed when you first started going over there at
Um,
all?
no, not really.
That's
And
good.
I think because we knew that we wanted to move to a city like Chicago,
Mm,
right?
mhm.
So as far as with accessibility, like grocery shopping and things like aquí hay de todo. And I think that that is that perception, right? That my mom used
Yeah.
to be that person que no, te tienes que llevar el jabón de tal y tal because they don't have it here in Mexico. I was like, Ma,
Mm,
they actually do. There's a
mhm.
Costco, like they actually do. And it's also just like,
Misconceptions. Yeah.
yeah, like it's like, you have to give in, give out, right? Like there's always substitutions to things, as far as like the materialistic things are that like I
Mhm.
have this favorite SPF, sunblock lotion, and I was like, dang, I'm running out. And I'm like, ugh, but then how long will it take for me to go to the US? Or who am I going to find someone que va a venir aquí a visitar? And I'm like, no,
Yeah.
you know what? There's plenty out here. And
Yeah. It's
and I
funny.
think it's that perception about that
Mm,
everything that's made in the US, not even US, like
mhm,
everything is that you can buy in the US, like no lo
mhm,
tienen aquí. And it's
mhm,
like,
mhm. Yeah, it's
like
also healing work and like letting go of consumerism, right?
exactly.
Is like feeling like you have to be buying this or that in order,
Yeah.
not the material things to fill the void, or whether it's
Right.
for therapy, to like get that quick dopamine fix, no judgment on
Hmm.
anybody, right? But yeah, that's a really good point. I started making a lot of things from home, like body care and laundry
That's
detergent, and just a lot of
good.
things are expensive, and then all the chemicals obviously. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's such a good point. Like you do some work, you start again breaking away from that scarcity and then being redefining like how could I say, seeing things differently. Like it's not just
Hmm.
because it wasn't in the US doesn't mean like here I could find something of
Right.
better value or quality. Like, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And even like the spending aspect of things, right? Like
Mm,
it was so easy for me to go to a Target, and from what ended up wanting just like toothpaste, it ended up being like $100 worth of merchandise. And, I don't
right?
have that level of accessibility,
Exactly.
right?
That is so
And
true. And that's what they want to do, right? They want to put you in that
yes,
trap of spending and
yes. Or like
consumerism.
online shopping, like
Mm-hmm.
here, people don't really online shop. Like people actually
Mm-hmm.
go to the mall.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not about spending, it's about just spending quality time, with your friends or your family. And like the malls are actually packed in here. And again, yeah, it's this whole different level and experience, but I'm embracing it, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm observing it. Like, yeah, like observing it and also embracing it at the same time because I'm
Mm-hmm.
seeing what people are doing here and what different priorities are to them. And a lot of times for some families, it's like family time is a priority or
Mm-hmm.
my kids' education is a priority. So I'm willing to
Mm-hmm.
spend more on my kids' education than spending
Exactly.
whatever amount of money on clothes. And so
Right.
there's different aspects of this that people are willing to compartmentalize, whereas in the US, it's like, I don't know, you just spend and spend and spend.
Mindless. There's a lot of mindless spending.
Yeah,
Yeah. A
yeah,
lot of healing
yeah,
around that too. Yeah, that's such a good point. I mean, it's again, it's the culture. I feel like, just the Hispanic, the Mexican culture is really just about community and family. I feel
yeah,
like it's just a big, which is for so many years, a lot of colonialism and all. It's just what tried to break that apart, right? To break the family traditions, break the family cultures, because that's
mhm,
what kept us strong. That's what kept us together and fighting, and it was our strength together, right? You're rebuilding of your village over there on your
yeah,
own. That's amazing. What do
yeah.
you hope other Latina moms will learn from you and your journey so far?
Oh, that's a great question. I think just giving it a try, I think for me, like I said, I never knew that I would move back to the motherland, ¿verdad? De donde son mis papás. But I think there this has been a whole healing process for me that I really want others to really experience it and see it for themselves, especially
Mm,
if there are moments of whether if it's feeling stuck or feeling like they have no other options, or if they've always wanted to do this, but they feel like they're not going to have a life here. Like millions of people live, I mean, billions of people live outside of the US. The US
mm,
is nowhere
mhm, mhm.
better than any other country.
Exactly.
And I think that you just have to give it a try. And I think if anything, to any Latina mom listening, it's all about really understanding like your inner voice, listening to it. You know, si no se te presenta algo, like there's a reason why.
Mhm,
And another thing will kind of can come in the way and that you perhaps never thought of, but give it a try and see how that works. Because that in itself, it's almost like honoring your ancestors and honoring,
mhm.
where your people come from, because our people
Yeah.
are hella resilient and
Hmm.
have fought
For sure.
and pushed and have found different ways on how they can have a better life. And if you listen to that, you're not only benefiting yourself, but you're also honoring, the people
Mhm.
behind you. So
Exactly. And that strength is carried within, passed down generation in the DNA. So it's
yes,
definitely in there.
it's in
Just
us.
got to
It's
be
in us.
remembered and reignited, right? Thank you so
Oh,
much. So what do you think are some of the biggest lessons that you're learning so far in this season?
whew. Yeah, I think one of the biggest lessons for me has been definitely letting go past the fear, um
Mm,
being creative and knowing that there's different options, understanding your skills and how you can contribute those skills into something different or unique.
mm.
Um and I think just
Like
like being
that.
open. Yeah,
Hmm.
just being open to what's in you with you right now at this moment, and I think for me, that sense of openness has allowed me to
Mm.
make new friends, being willing and able to navigate a different country, because even though through identity, soy Mexicana, but culturally, logistically living here, it's very
Yeah,
different, just kind of
yeah,
figuring out the different bureaucracies within government offices that
for
we've gone
sure.
through, and
Right?
the school system, right? Like all of this is all different. And it's a matter of just being open
To
to
learn.
to
Mhm.
learn and
Yeah.
accept and navigate it just as other people that keep.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And what is bringing you the most joy right now?
Yeah. Right now, I would say, oh my gosh, there's just a lot of things. So we recently moved to a new house. So we got a new,
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, we got a new contract. And so I think it's refreshing. I don't know. I've done so many moves throughout like the past 3 years. I kid you not, but it's always refreshing to let go of some stuff and,
Oh,
keeping the things
yeah.
that we actually need.
Mhm.
And so it's
It's like
nice
a purge
that,
and a detox to your
yes,
energetic
yes,
system.
yes. And so
Mhm.
that has been really nice to just like
Oh,
experience that right now.
good. And it's also a little bit of liberating and freeing to relieve some
Yeah,
of that excess baggage you don't need. It's a very
yeah,
energetic cleanse.
it
Love
is.
that. Thank
Yeah.
you. And lastly, Jessica, how can our community get in touch with you? Where can they learn more about you and connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, I am on Instagram, which is Viva La Mami, all together. And you can also listen to my podcast, and I can share you the link where you were on the show as well,
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Marissa. But yeah, you can listen to Viva La Mami wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm also on YouTube. And
Excellent.
then if you want to connect, especially having that one-on-one consultation, you can DM me on Instagram, or you can email me at info@vivalamami.com, and we
Great.
can
Well, I'll put
connect.
all those in the show notes for sure. All those
Yeah,
links. I'll definitely put them out there. Jessica, thank
absolutely.
you so much for sharing your story with us today and for taking time out of your busy day to connect. I
Yeah,
love it. And I love, what I love about your journey is that it's like reminding us sometimes really the bravest things we can do is kind of like slow down and question the path that we're on. It's not easy, but
mm,
like just taking some time to feel into that, versus like what we've been told to do or follow what life we're supposed to create, or, what I mean? It's really easy to kind of forget what else is out there, like you said, being open-minded, right? Versus like, okay, tuning into how we feel and what feels more aligned, or whether it's our culture we want to tune into, or for our own well-being, our children, right? There's so much, a sense of belonging, right?
yeah,
Community, and seeing what's missing. And
yeah,
so to everyone listening, I hope this conversation inspires you to reflect on what success truly means to you and what kind of life you're creating for yourself and for your family. So if you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend or leave a review, and connect with Jessica at the links in the show notes below. All right. Until next time, everyone, take care and be well. Thank you, Jessica.
thank you.